studio lights burned hot. The audience clapped in rhythm, and Stephen Colbert flashed his trademark grin as the cameras rolled. But what no one expected was that within minutes, a Hollywood legend would storm out, leaving the show's live taping in chaos. Denzel Washington, a man known for his composure, power, and grace, found himself in an exchange so heated that it shattered the carefully crafted late-night atmosphere. What began as playful banter morphed into an unscripted battle of wit and will, and by the time the segment reached its breaking point, viewers were left stunned as Washington rose from his seat, shook his head, and walked off the stage. The clash was fiery, raw, and unforgettable, forcing audiences to ask whether Colbert had gone too far, or if Washington simply refused to be cornered. It all began innocently enough. The applause sign blinked, the crowd cheered, and Colbert leaned forward with a glint of mischief in his eye. He had a history of pushing his guests, probing where others feared to go. But with Denzel Washington, an Oscar-winning actor with a reputation for commanding respect, the challenge was on another level. The conversation started light, touching on Washington's upcoming film and his legacy in Hollywood. The audience laughed, clapped, and leaned in as two titans of culture sparred with charm. But then Colbert pivoted. Instead of the rehearsed questions publicists often expect, he veered straight into controversy. He pressed Washington about Hollywood politics, about the perception that actors were out of touch with the public, and about whether Washington had grown too serious for the entertainment world. At first, Washington tried to brush it off with humor. He smiled, deflected with a joke, and delivered his trademark calm tone. But Colbert wouldn't let up. Each follow-up was sharper, more confrontational, daring Washington to react. The energy in the room shifted. What had been laughter turned to a nervous murmur, and the cameras captured the tension tightening like a coiled spring. Washington leaned forward, his eyes narrowing with the same intensity that had shaken audiences in films like Training Day. His voice dropped lower, steadier, the kind of tone that could silence an entire room. "Stephen," he said slowly, "there's a line between asking questions and trying to box someone in, and I don't play that game." The audience gasped, some applauding, others silent, unsure of what would come next. But Colbert, ever the provocateur, grinned wider as if daring Washington to keep going. The clash escalated. Colbert pushed him on personal views, implying contradictions, calling into question not just his career but his integrity. Washington, visibly bristling now, shook his head and delivered a verbal strike that hit the audience like a thunderclap. "I've spent my life building a body of work that speaks for itself. I don't need to sit here and defend myself on late-night TV to score ratings." The crowd roared, some cheering Washington's defiance, others laughing awkwardly as Colbert attempted to regain control. But Washington wasn't finished. His voice carried the same power that had filled theaters across decades, and in that moment, the polite boundaries of late-night television were obliterated. Colbert, still refusing to back down, cracked a joke at Washington's expense, trying to diffuse the rising temperature. Instead, it only poured fuel on the fire. Washington rose from his chair, towering over the desk, his presence larger than life. He pointed toward the audience and declared, "I came here to talk about my work, not to be ambushed." With that, he turned, offered a curt nod to the crowd, and walked off the stage. The gasp that followed rattled the studio walls. Colbert's smirk faltered, replaced with a flash of genuine shock. For a moment, the cameras had no idea where to turn. Focus on Colbert's stunned face, the empty chair, or the roaring audience. Backstage chaos erupted as producers scrambled, unsure whether to cut to commercial, keep rolling, or attempt damage control live. Colbert tried to recover, joking nervously about how Washington had left him hanging. But the electricity in the room told a different story. The audience wasn't laughing. They had witnessed a once-in-a-generation moment, the kind of unscripted clash that couldn't be staged or smoothed over. What made it even more powerful was Washington's refusal to play along, to let himself be another headline manipulated for late-night entertainment. He had walked out on principle, and whether one agreed with him or not, the act sent shockwaves through Hollywood and beyond. Within hours, clips of the confrontation flooded social media. Hashtags trended worldwide. Fans debated fiercely. Was Washington right to stand his ground, or had he overreacted to the rough-and-tumble style of Colbert's questioning? Supporters hailed him as a man unwilling to compromise his dignity, pointing to his decades of work and leadership both on and off screen. Critics argued that late-night shows thrive on confrontation, that Washington knew what he was signing up for, and that walking out looked like weakness. But no matter which side one chose, there was no denying the cultural earthquake the moment created. Hollywood insiders whispered about the fallout. Would Washington's team ever book him on Colbert's show again? Would other actors think twice before stepping into that chair? For years, Washington had been seen as untouchable, a man of quiet authority who could control any room he entered. To see him pushed to the point of walking out was unprecedented, and it left the entertainment world buzzing. Colbert, meanwhile, was caught between applause and criticism. Some praised his willingness to ask tough questions. Others accused him of disrespecting a guest who had given decades of artistry to the industry. But perhaps the most striking takeaway was how Washington's walkout illuminated a deeper cultural tension. In an era when celebrities are expected to not only perform but also deliver political sound bites, Washington drew a line in the sand. He refused to let his identity be reduced to a soundbite or a viral moment, refusing the machinery of late-night comedy that thrives on dissecting personalities. He reminded audiences that beneath the laughter and applause there are boundaries that can't be crossed. In the days that followed, the clash didn't fade. It grew. Analysts on talk shows replayed the moment. Body language experts dissected Washington's movements, and opinion writers declared it a turning point in how Hollywood icons engaged with late-night TV. What no one could deny was that Colbert's show would never be quite the same again. The clip of Washington rising, his voice cutting through the air, and walking off with unshakable dignity had already etched itself into pop culture history. The studio stage, built for laughs and applause, had become the scene of an unscripted showdown that audiences couldn't stop watching. In one fiery clash, Denzel Washington had reminded the world that even in an age of constant media spin, there are still individuals willing to walk away rather than compromise who they are. That empty chair on Colbert's stage was more than a prop. It was a symbol. And in that silence after Washington walked out, the message echoed louder than anything Colbert could have scripted. Some lines aren't meant to be crossed, no matter how bright the lights or how loud the laughter. The night after the walkout, the air was thick with speculation. Late-night television had long been a stage for controversy, but what happened between Stephen Colbert and Denzel Washington wasn't just another viral spat. It was something deeper, more raw, and far harder to sweep under the rug. The clip replayed endlessly online, Colbert's grin curdling into unease, the audience gasping, and Washington standing with unshakable resolve before striding off into the wings. Social media became a battleground, with fans, critics, and industry insiders rushing to stake their claim on the meaning of it all. Some saw Washington as a hero, refusing to be diminished by cheap comedy. Others accused him of being too thin-skinned for modern media. But one thing was clear. The clash had transcended late-night banter and turned into a cultural flashpoint. Within hours, Washington's name trended across platforms, hashtag splitting the digital landscape in two. Team Denzel dominated, with fans sharing clips of his most iconic performances alongside declarations that he had done what so many wished they could do: stand up and walk away from a situation that crossed the line. Memes flooded in, showing Washington as a gladiator refusing to be cornered in Colbert's arena. Others, siding with Colbert, argued that Washington had forgotten the game. If you sit in that chair, you know the fire's coming. The divide only fueled the frenzy, each side digging deeper, unwilling to give ground. Hollywood quickly joined the fray. Fellow actors, many of whom had sat nervously in that same chair, offered their thoughts. One A-list comedian tweeted that Colbert had poked the wrong bear. A celebrated actress defended Washington, saying that dignity was worth more than applause. But others in the industry quietly admitted Colbert had a point. Washington's reluctance to engage with uncomfortable questions made him seem detached in a world where transparency was the new currency. It wasn't just a spat between a host and a guest. It had become a referendum on what celebrities owed the public. Colbert, meanwhile, faced his own storm. The morning after, his team released a clipped statement. It praised Washington's legacy, brushed the clash off as spirited conversation, and insisted there was no bad blood. But viewers weren't buying it. They remembered the smirk, the digs, the way Colbert leaned into the tension instead of diffusing it. Critics accused him of chasing shock value, sacrificing respect for a headline. Late-night hosts are supposed to needle, but the question was whether Colbert had crossed into outright ambush. Washington, by contrast, stayed silent. His publicist declined interviews, his social media accounts went dark, and no official comment was released. That silence only made the moment bigger. Fans scoured old interviews, looking for signs of similar confrontations. They revisited his speeches, his past refusals to play Hollywood's games, his reputation for protecting his privacy. In Washington's silence, people projected their own meanings. Some saw it as dignity, others as avoidance. But either way, the silence was louder than Colbert's nervous jokes in the days that followed. News outlets pounced. Major papers ran front-page stories. Opinion writers dissected what the clash revealed about celebrity culture. Cable news shows played the clip on loop, each network twisting it to fit their own narrative. For some, Washington's refusal to engage was proof that Hollywood elites felt they were above scrutiny. For others, it was a refreshing reminder that stars didn't have to bow to the entertainment machine. The debate spilled far beyond entertainment coverage. It became part of the national conversation about authenticity, respect, and the role of media in shaping public perception. Behind the scenes, networks worried, bookers scrambled, fearing that other stars might grow hesitant to appear on Colbert's show. Washington wasn't just another guest, he was a heavyweight, and if he could walk out, what message did that send? The ripple effect was immediate. Some actors publicly confirmed they were reconsidering their talk show appearances. The world of late night, already struggling with dwindling ratings, couldn't afford to lose the star power that made these shows relevant. Meanwhile, Washington's fans mobilized. Online forums and fan pages lit up with admiration. They revisited his past interviews where he had spoken about truth, discipline, and integrity. Quotes about standing firm in your values went viral, repackaged as digital mantras alongside the walkout clip. He wasn't just a movie star anymore. He was being framed as a symbol of resistance, a man unwilling to play by rules he didn't respect. But there were cracks in the narrative too. Critics pointed to moments when Washington had delivered pointed commentary himself, suggesting he wasn't above engaging in heated conversations when it suited him. They argued that his walkout wasn't about principle, but about control. He wanted to dictate the terms, and when Colbert refused, he bolted. That critique gained traction in certain circles, especially among those who believed celebrities had grown too insulated from the real world. The late-night industry responded cautiously. Other hosts subtly referenced the moment, careful not to alienate Washington's massive fan base. One quipped that their show's exit doors are always unlocked, just in case. Another praised Washington's career but added slyly, "We're not here to do PR, we're here to ask questions." The rivalry between hosts gave the incident new life, as each tried to position themselves as the one who could handle Washington or avoid his wrath altogether. As days stretched into weeks, the moment refused to fade. Producers leaked behind-the-scenes whispers that Washington's team had warned Colbert not to cross certain lines, that Colbert had gone off script deliberately, that even the crew was stunned by the escalation. None of it was confirmed, but the rumors added fuel. The mystique around the clash grew. It wasn't just a TV moment anymore. It was folklore, a story retold with each new spin, each new meme, each new angle. And then came the real question. Would Washington address it? When his next public appearance was announced, a film festival where he was receiving a Lifetime Achievement Award, the buzz hit fever pitch. Reporters prepared questions, fans speculated about whether he would mention the walkout, and organizers quietly begged him to keep the focus on his work. When the night arrived, Washington took the stage, dignified as ever, and gave a speech filled with gratitude, humility, and his trademark gravitas. He never mentioned Colbert, not once, but when the crowd rose to their feet in thunderous applause, it felt like an answer in itself. The silence wasn't weakness, it was control. Washington didn't need to explain himself. He didn't need to trade blows with Colbert in the press. He had already made his point the moment he stood up, turned his back on the cameras, and left. His silence kept the power in his hands, leaving Colbert and the entire media machine grasping for narrative. In the end, Washington won not by arguing, but by refusing to play the game at all. What lingered wasn't just the drama of the moment, but the lesson it carried. In a culture obsessed with clips, with sound bites, with endless spin, Washington reminded the world that sometimes the most powerful statement is walking away. That empty chair on Colbert's stage didn't just mark a clash between two men. It became a symbol of boundaries, of dignity, of the refusal to be reduced to a punchline. And as the world replayed the clip for the millionth time, the silence that followed Washington's exit said more than any late-night monologue ever could. The aftershocks of Denzel Washington's stormy exit from Colbert's stage didn't just fade into background chatter. They redefined the way late-night television was forced to operate. It wasn't merely a clash between a single guest and a single host. It became a litmus test for the boundaries of entertainment, celebrity, and respect. For years, late-night hosts thrived on the thin line between humor and humiliation, daring their guests to laugh at themselves while secretly hoping for a viral slip-up. But Washington's fiery walkout threw a wrench into that formula. Suddenly, what had once been good television began to look like exploitation, and stars weren't eager to be the next clip used as meme fodder at their own expense. Inside television boardrooms, executives grew uneasy. The walkout clip had generated massive engagement, but the aftermath was messy. Washington wasn't just another actor. He was a cultural icon, a man whose presence alone commanded authority. His decision to leave on principle struck a nerve that went far beyond entertainment. If Colbert could lose control of a Washington interview, what did that say about the late-night model as a whole? Could any host risk alienating A-list stars, especially when streaming platforms already gave celebrities safer, more controlled outlets for promotion? Booking departments quietly shifted their strategies. Where once late-night producers encouraged hosts to go for the jugular, to create viral moments, now they were urged to play it safer with top-tier talent. Washington's walkout made stars realize they had leverage. Why subject themselves to Colbert's sharp tongue or Fallon's unpredictable bits when a podcast or a carefully curated YouTube interview could give them the audience without the risk? Publicists, always wary of exposure, began inserting new clauses into agreements, insisting on stricter boundaries around topics. No ambush questions became a new mantra. Meanwhile, rival late-night hosts smelled blood in the water. Jimmy Fallon, often criticized for being too soft on guests, suddenly looked vindicated. Clips of him laughing awkwardly with celebrities were repackaged as proof that he knew how to keep things light. Jimmy Kimmel, ever the sharp political commentator, balanced carefully, acknowledging Washington's stature while poking fun at Colbert for burning a bridge. The competition was fierce, but each host knew one thing. If they could position themselves as the safe space for A-listers in the wake of Colbert's misstep, bookings would fall into their lap. Colbert himself was caught in an awkward position. He thrived on confrontation, his brand depended on it. But Washington's walkout was different. It wasn't a politician or a pundit storming off, it was one of Hollywood's most respected actors. And audiences weren't willing to laugh it off as just another gag. The backlash forced Colbert into a tightrope act. On one hand, he doubled down, joking in monologues about losing to Denzel and framing himself as the plucky underdog. On the other, he quietly tried to mend relationships behind the scenes, reassuring nervous publicists that their stars wouldn't face the same treatment. It was a dance of damage control, but the shadow of that empty chair loomed large. The entertainment press continued to stoke the fire. Think pieces declared that the era of ambush television was over. Others speculated that Washington had set a precedent. If a star of his caliber could walk out without fear of backlash, why couldn't others? Slowly a shift began. Guests became bolder about pushing back, not with outbursts but with firm boundaries. A popular musician flatly refused to answer a probing political question on another show, citing Washington's walkout as inspiration. A director dodged a satirical skit, joking that they weren't going to end up like Denzel. The precedent had been set, and it rippled outward. For fans, the incident became a rallying point. Washington's defiance resonated in an age when audiences were growing weary of forced authenticity. People admired the way he had drawn a line and refused to let his reputation be reduced to a viral punchline. They weren't just watching a celebrity anymore. They were watching a man defending his dignity in real time. That act carried weight, especially in a media climate that thrived on tearing public figures apart. Washington's walkout became not only a pop culture moment but a cultural parable. Sometimes, walking away is the loudest form of resistance. Even years later, analysts looked back on that night as a turning point. Late-night television never regained the dominance it once had. The walkout symbolized a broader trend, the decline of the old gatekeepers. Where once stars needed late-night shows to sell films or promote albums, now they had direct access to fans through digital platforms. Washington's exit wasn't the cause of this shift, but it crystallized it in the public eye. It became the night when the balance of power tipped. Ironically, Washington himself emerged stronger. His silence after the clash, his refusal to give interviews or feed the media machine only heightened his mystique. Every appearance he made afterward was treated with reverence, as though audiences were grateful just to see him on stage again. When he accepted awards, when he delivered speeches, people leaned in closer, remembering the night he had walked away from Colbert. That single act of defiance had become part of his legend, cementing him not just as an actor but as a figure of principle. Colbert, though, struggled. While he continued to command strong ratings, the moment hung over his legacy. For some viewers, it was a thrilling spectacle, proof that he wasn't afraid to spar with anyone. But for others, it exposed a darker side, a willingness to push too far, to sacrifice respect for entertainment. In the court of public opinion, Colbert didn't emerge as the victor. Washington's refusal to play along stripped away the host's control, leaving him scrambling in a way audiences rarely saw. As time went on, the Washington walkout became a story retold in media circles, each version reshaped to fit the teller's agenda. Some framed it as Washington defending his dignity. Others painted it as a cautionary tale for guests who underestimated Colbert's edge. But no matter the spin, one truth endured. That empty chair was unforgettable. It wasn't just a gap on Colbert's stage. It was a symbol of defiance, a reminder that even in the glare of studio lights, a single person could reclaim their power by simply refusing to play along. And for Washington, the moment only reinforced what his career had always embodied. He wasn't just a performer. He was a man who commanded respect on screen and off. The walkout wasn't a stumble, it was a statement. It said that dignity wasn't negotiable, that even under the hottest lights and sharpest questions there are lines you don't cross. Years later, people would still talk about it, replaying the clip, debating its meaning, and marveling at the night when one of Hollywood's most powerful figures chose silence over spectacle and walked away without looking back.